Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Representatives from Georgia's Atlanta Police Department say that a carjacking unexpectedly turned into a race against the clock this week after the suspect crashed the stolen vehicle right in the path of an oncoming train. According to reports, the incident started out as nothing more than a routine traffic stop when an officer pulled over a driver on Greenbrier Parkway in southwest Atlanta at around 2 a.m. on January 28th. However, the situation took a dramatic turn when, as the officer was talking to the driver inside his vehicle, another man, later identified as 29-year-old Michael Parker, allegedly hopped inside the officer's police cruiser and sped off. The Atlanta PD officer quickly radioed in what had happened, and soon a police helicopter was able to spot the vehicle from the air. Officers on the ground followed as Parker allegedly continued to try and evade them at high speeds. When Parker drove off the road and onto some train tracks near McDonough Boulevard a short time later, authorities say it initially looked like the incident was over. Once on the tracks, the cruiser had overturned onto its driver's side, becoming immobilized. However, as police began to surround the vehicle, some of them noticed something in the distance. There was a train headed directly for the flipped police vehicle. With this realization, the situation immediately pivoted into a rescue effort, with officers desperately trying to pull Parker from the cruiser. They were apparently successful just moments before the freight train collided with the vehicle. Thankfully, it appears no one was injured. Parker was taken into custody after the incident and is now facing a number of charges, including theft by taking, fleeing and eluding, reckless driving, obstruction, and damage to city property.
Authorities in the city of Grand Junction, Colorado, say that it was a miracle no one was killed this week after a 45-year-old man allegedly intentionally crashed his truck into the local police station during broad daylight. The incident took place at around 12:30 p.m. on January 25th, when 45-year-old Nathan Chacon reportedly drove directly into the lobby of the Grand Junction police station in his 2007 Chevy Silverado truck. Officers say that Chacon made no attempt to stop before hitting the building's front doors, and instead accelerated, leveling the front entrance and finally coming to a stop after slamming into a windowed wall equipped with bulletproof glass in the reception area. There were apparently 11 people working just behind that wall at the time, all of whom could have been injured or killed had the wall not been able to absorb the impact. Representatives from the police force say that it's even more miraculous that no members of the public were inside the station at the time. This is because the truck plowed directly through the main seating area where people are normally asked to wait while filling out reports or obtaining assistance. After the dramatic crash, police say that Chacon bizarrely admitted that he had intentionally driven his truck into the station, though claimed that he had an innocent explanation. He stated that he thought he was being followed by several cars after leaving his house that morning, and chose to crash into the police station because he didn't want to be killed and did so, quote, in order to be heard. It appears that this is far from the first time that Chacon has made these kinds of claims. According to police, the 45-year-old has made at least 90 calls over the past few years where he reported, quote, strange happenings that have been unfounded. Authorities further claim that in the days before the police station crash, Chacon had been calling them repeatedly. In several of these calls, he reportedly became frustrated with officers, hanging up on them and swearing at them over the phone. At the time of this recording, Chacon is now facing multiple charges, including attempted first-degree murder, attempted first-degree assault, attempted vehicular homicide, reckless driving, attempted vehicular assault, criminal mischief, and reckless endangerment. Grand Junction police say that they only have a rough estimate of the damage done to their station so far, but believe that repairs will cost more than $100,000, but less than $1 million.
Representatives from the Michigan State Police say that a 33-year-old man is dead this week after he dangerously shone a laser at a police helicopter before firing at it from the ground. According to reports, the incident began at around 7:30 p.m. on January 24th, when the state police's Trooper 2 helicopter was flying above northwestern Detroit. As the helicopter was circling an area around the 12,000 block of Terry Street near Tyler Avenue, suddenly officers noticed a strong green laser light emanating from one of the properties below. The light persisted for some time and was clearly being deliberately shone at the helicopter in an attempt to blind the pilot. As those aboard the helicopter radioed to other members of the state police to inform them of the situation, things took a dramatic turn. A man, allegedly the same one who had been shining the laser, exited the property and walked out into the backyard. He was armed with some kind of long gun and began to fire at the state police helicopter. Police were reportedly forced to return fire, during which time the suspect was killed. While the suspect's name has not been released at the time of this recording, several sources have identified him as a 33-year-old man. The property where the incident took place was reportedly abandoned, and the suspect was simply staying there at the time. A search following the shooting revealed multiple weapons and ammunition stashes inside. The motive behind the incident is still being investigated.
Representatives from the NYPD say that a second man has been arrested and is facing charges this week following the heinous murder of an elderly woman in her own home. According to reports, the incident began at around 9:30 p.m. on January 18th, when a woman named Maria Terrero went to check on her 74-year-old sister, Maria Hernandez, at her apartment in Manhattan's Upper West Side neighborhood. She apparently made the trip after being called by her sister's daughter, who said that she hadn't been able to reach her mother. When Terrero entered her sister's third-floor unit, she likely expected to find her alive and well. Multiple reports say that they had been together just hours earlier. However, when Terrero went inside, she was instead greeted by a horrifying scene. The place had been ransacked, and Maria was dead on her bedroom floor. She was lying face down, had been gagged, clothes and a sheet had been thrown on top of her, and her hands and feet were bound. An autopsy would soon determine that she had been brutally beaten and strangled to death. While Maria's friends, family members, and neighbors struggled to comprehend why or how anyone could have done this to her, police were able to make an arrest in the case just 3 days later. The suspect was a 47-year-old man named LaShawn Mackey. According to reports, Mackey not only has a violent past, having only been released from jail in 2019 after serving nearly 2 decades for a vicious stabbing. He also worked in Maria's building as a temporary employee. Sources allege that it was a part of a program for formerly incarcerated people to find work. This week, authorities announced the arrest of a second man in connection with the case, 53-year-old Terrence Moore. Like Mackey, Moore reportedly has an extensive criminal history, having formerly served 27 years on second-degree murder and first-degree robbery charges. He was on lifetime parole at the time of his arrest this week. While it's unclear exactly what evidence police currently have against the two suspects, among the clues reportedly collected so far is surveillance footage of them allegedly entering Maria's apartment building together around the time of the crime. Authorities say that they were able to gain access to the property using Mackey's knowledge of the building, and as part of the scheme, allegedly forced their way into the property's basement office in order to remove surveillance video equipment. The exact motives behind the crime and why Maria specifically was targeted remains unclear. At the time of this recording, both Moore and Mackey have been charged with murder, attempted murder, and burglary in connection with the case. The situation is still under investigation.
Representatives from a Catholic church in Fargo, North Dakota say that it's Jesus who needs saving this week after one of their statues of him was destroyed by a half-naked woman believed to be on drugs. According to reports, the whole thing started at around 6:30 p.m. on January 23rd when police were called to St. Mary's Cathedral near the corner of 7th Street and 6th Avenue. When officers arrived at the scene, they saw a woman, later identified as 35-year-old Brittany Reynolds, exiting the church and trying to run away across the street. She had no shirt, no bra, and no shoes on. After police caught up with Reynolds, she allegedly wasn't able to answer basic questions about where and who she was and what she was doing, leading officers to believe that she was under the influence of drugs. She was initially placed on a psychiatric hold, though was later put under arrest. Police were provided surveillance footage from St. Mary's Cathedral, which allegedly captured Reynolds' actions prior to police being called. After entering the church, the 35-year-old knocked over a potted plant before walking over to a large statue of Jesus and completely ripping it off the wall. Pieces of the statue reportedly broke off upon hitting the floor. Police and church officials say that they are unsure of the exact value of the item, but were able to find a similar statue listed online for $11,500. At the time of this recording, authorities say that Reynolds is currently being held in the Cass County Jail. She has been charged with felony criminal mischief.
Representatives from Michigan's Wyandotte Police Department say that they have been receiving countless messages of support and defense for an alleged thief recently, who is accused of stealing from his fellow officers. Don't worry though, it's not what you think. According to reports, it all started on January 10th at the Wyandotte Police Station when an officer by the last name of Barwig was having lunch in the break room. While in the middle of eating, Officer Barwig was called away to the local jail. It was urgent, so he got up, leaving his food on the table, likely believing that no one would be brazen enough to mess with it in the middle of a police station. However, Barwig was wrong. He returned a short time later, only to find that his entire meal had vanished. Apparently, it didn't take long to track down the alleged perpetrator. Just moments before Barwig discovered his lunch was gone, it just so happened that one of his colleagues had leisurely strolled out of the break room. His name is Officer Ice, one of the department's police canines. And according to Barwig, Officer Ice was guiltily licking his chops. The whole story was released earlier this month by Wyandotte Police on their Facebook page, featuring a now viral photoshopped image purporting to be Officer Ice's mugshot. Thankfully, it looks like the police canine won't be facing any repercussions for chowing down on his fellow officer's lunch. When Wyandotte Police asked members of the public how they should proceed with the case, many quickly came to the dog's defense. Several offered to represent him in court pro bono, with one commenter saying, quote, "If the teeth don't fit, you must acquit." For their part, Wyandotte Police say that Officer Ice is a well-socialized police dog. Though he doesn't go out on patrol much anymore since he's over 10 years old, he maintains his canine certifications. These days, Officer Ice mostly does community and school-associated events. His handler says that he's calm, loves to be pet, and enjoys playing with his toy ball.
Authorities in Barber County, West Virginia say that a 47-year-old man is in custody and facing charges this week after he allegedly held a woman against her will for several hours and brutally attacked her in his home. The incident began sometime on January 24th when police in the city of Philippi received a 911 call about a domestic disturbance in the Anglin Run subdivision. They arrived to find a visibly injured woman who was hiding under the porch of a house. The woman claimed that she had just narrowly escaped from an adjacent property belonging to 47-year-old Sammy Martz, where she had been held captive for several hours. According to the victim, she had tried to leave the house earlier that morning, but Martz would not let her. Instead, he had attacked her, brutally beating her all over her body and burning her in multiple places with a butane torch while threatening to kill her. The woman said that this harrowing ordeal had lasted for between 4 and 5 hours until she was finally able to escape through a back window of the residence and run to safety. After informing police that Martz was still inside and was armed, officers reportedly entered the property. The 47-year-old was arrested when he walked out of a back bedroom, after which he allegedly admitted to burning the female victim and attacking her. Police say that a large quantity of methamphetamine was subsequently discovered in the house. At the time of this recording, Martz has been charged with kidnapping, though more charges are expected to follow. His relationship to the victim, who is still recovering at a local hospital, remains unclear.
Authorities in San Mateo County, California say that they are investigating the aftermath of a tragic shooting this week after a disgruntled agricultural worker reportedly snapped and gunned down several people at 2 different farms in the area. The incident began just after 2:20 p.m. on January 23rd, when police received a 911 call about a shooting in progress in Half Moon Bay, a small coastal city roughly 30 miles south of San Francisco. When officers arrived at the scene, a mushroom farm called California Terra Garden, they reportedly found 5 victims suffering from gunshot wounds. 4 would sadly soon be pronounced dead. As police were in the midst of responding to the carnage, a second call came in. The gunman had now made his way to another farm in the area called Concord Farms. 3 people had been shot there as well, and all would tragically die from their injuries. A little less than 2.5 hours after the terrifying incidents unfolded, police were finally able to arrest the suspect, later identified as 66-year-old Chun-Li Zhao. Zhao was taken into custody after his vehicle was spotted in the parking lot of the police station in Half Moon Bay. The weapon he allegedly used in both shootings was also recovered from inside. Following Zhao's arrest, details about what had led up to the horrific crime started to emerge. It was revealed that the 66-year-old was an employee of the farm where he began the attacks, and had formerly worked for the second as well. Then, after several days in custody, Zhao apparently opened up to police. According to reports, the 66-year-old suspect told investigators that he had snapped after an altercation that day with a supervisor and one of his colleagues at California Terra Garden. The incident was allegedly related to a dispute over a $100 bill for repairs that Zhao had been slapped with following a collision between a forklift that he had been driving and a bulldozer. Zhao claimed that despite not being responsible for the collision, he was still given the bill, and was told that he would have to pay it when he tried to speak to his supervisor. Zhao further stated that he had worked long hours on the farm, had been bullied there, and that his complaints had been routinely ignored. After grabbing his gun that afternoon, the 66-year-old allegedly started by shooting the supervisor and colleague that he had been arguing with. He then walked over to an area of the farm housing small trailers where he and several of the other employees lived, and killed the co-worker's wife as well. He shot 2 other victims at the farm before traveling to his former workplace and killing 3 others there who he felt had previously wronged him as well. According to reports, Zhao is a Chinese national who has lived in the United States for 11 years. Reports appear to differ on whether he was in the country legally or not at the time of this week's deadly incident, though the majority of sources we came across stated that he did have a green card. While the investigation into the tragedy is still underway, authorities now say that they are looking into the 2 farms where the incidents occurred as well. In particular, police are reportedly investigating the allegedly dilapidated and makeshift homes that the company's workers are housed in, where both Zhao and the victims were supposedly being charged $300 a month to live. This is despite reports that neither of the farms allegedly obtained any of the permits required to house workers on the properties. At the time of this recording, Zhao remains in custody and is now facing 7 murder charges, 1 count of attempted murder, firearm use enhancements, and a count of special circumstance allegation of multiple murder. The situation is still developing. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a minute to thank our amazing supporters over on Patreon. As many of you are aware, our situation on YouTube always seems to be a bit uncertain, but our patrons help to ensure that we can continue to make content like this long term without having to worry as much about what surprises might be thrown our way. Plus, patrons also get access to 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. If you'd like to help support the channel directly, head over to patreon.com/crimezone to join. You can also find that link in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and take care.